Hi, my name is Lee Gale Gruen. My first name actually is Lee Gale, even though it's 2 words. Yes, I am a writer now. I wrote my first book and it's just been published. The name of the book is Adventures with Dad, A Father and Daughter's Journey Through a Senior Acting Class. It is a true story. It's a memoir of when I retired from my 37-year career as a probation officer. And right after that, my father and I started attending a senior acting class together. I was 60, he was 85, and my mother had just died, and I invited him to come with me to a class I had just started, and we attended that class for 3 years. We performed together in the class showcases twice a year on stage before an audience. I wrote all the scenes that we performed, and we bonded more over that than ever in our lives. And then I went on to become a professional actress in my senior years. Oh my goodness, I've done lots and lots of commercials. I've been on cable TV several times. I was on General Hospital once. I was on Comedy Central recently. I was on The Doctors. That's a program that airs currently daily. Things like that. I've done community theater. I was in the Jane Fonda primetime Firm and Burn exercise DVD that she put out a couple of years ago. It's kind of like she did when she was younger, but now her exercises are more geared to seniors. And I was one of 6 exercise dancers backing her up.
Let's go back a little bit to your father.
Yes.
How do you think that experience, I realize that it helped you bond with your father, but what do you think your father specifically got from it?
Oh my goodness. You know, I like a lot to speak about this because I think that too many seniors are depressed. They don't know what to do with themselves. They've retired. The children are grown up. And it is vital that baby boomers and seniors find something to be passionate about, something that makes them want to get up in the morning, get dressed, get out of the house and embrace life. And that's what this gave to my father. My mother had just died. My father was always a very charismatic, outgoing personality, kind of the life of the party, loved to tell jokes. And he was so depressed. After my mother, they'd been married 61 years. And this just gave him something to be excited about. After I took him to that first class, and he was protesting, he didn't want to go. Well, on our way home, he was asking me what time I was going to pick him up next week for the class. And he was so excited about it. I wrote all the scenes. We would rehearse them together. We'd talk about them all the time. We'd talk about them on the telephone. He was always refining his role, putting in his own personality into it. He loved it. He absolutely loved it.
Were there any indications in his earlier life that he would take to acting like that?
Not really, not in his life or in my life. I was never involved in acting ever, and he was not. The only indication might have been that he was such an outgoing personality. He loved attention. I actually talk about that in the book too. A lot of that came from his insecurity as a younger man, as a child, and his way of dealing with that insecurity and some of the rejection that he got from his father was to attempt to get a lot of attention to himself. My way of dealing with my insecurity was to try to get no attention to myself. So the acting class helped us both. He got lots and lots of attention. He was the oldest one in the class. People adored him, the class members, and the audiences loved him. The audiences for our showcases were composed mostly of people that the other class members had invited, and they started asking from one showcase to the next, is that little old man going to be in there? And they'd come up to us afterward, total strangers. He was developing his own fan club, and he loved it.
What was your father's name?
My father his name was Marvin Shelf.
And what did he do for a living?
My father worked for, well, it changed names for several years over his career. He was in mid-management level at the final name, I believe, was North American Rockwell. It was an aircraft corporation.
He was an engineer or a salesman?
No, he was not an engineer. It's funny you mention that. My father first started at that company during World War II, and my parents moved out here when I was just a baby, out to Los Angeles, because they were hiring, and he was able to get a job in security. He was a security guard when he first started. And over the years, over his career, he worked himself up to a mid-management level. He was not an engineer, but his very last job, and I write about this in the book because it's so funny, his last job was evaluating employee suggestions for monetary awards in case they were adapted by the company and saved the company money. So for some reason, that position had the term engineer applied to it. It certainly was not a mathematical engineer. And from then on, he went around telling everybody he was an engineer. And as I say in the book, if others got the idea that he had a lot more education than he did, all the better.
Okay, you were telling me before about how long it took you to write the book. Why don't you share a little bit of that experience?
I first started thinking about the book maybe 2 years into our class. So that has to be about 9 years ago. And we were so well received. I mean, no one had ever had, that class had never had a father and daughter team in the class, a senior father and daughter team. And I began to think, gee, this would make a darling book. And then I started thinking, well, maybe I'll write something for my children. And then I began to think, well, maybe the public would be interested. And after a while I thought, oh, that's ridiculous. I'm not a writer. Well, what do I think I am? And so I put that idea away. And then months later I'd think about it again. And that went on and off like that for years. And finally one day, without having thought about the book for the last few years or so, I woke up in the middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning, and with most of the book written in my head. I had chapter headings, I had full paragraphs, I had the layout, I had everything. And I just couldn't go back to sleep, and I kept dialoguing with myself, trying to make a deal with myself. Okay, you go back to sleep and we'll deal with it in the morning. And the other half of me was saying, no way, you get up out of bed and start writing that down. So my first attempt at writing this book, and this is in the book, was on Post-its that I found in the bedroom. I did not want to get up fully and walk down the hallway to get real paper. So I had Post-its all over the place. That was my first start on the book.
This relationship with your father and the things that I have read about it and heard you say about it, do you get any comparisons with Tuesdays with Morrie?
It's very interesting that you mention that. In submitting my query letter to attempt to get a publisher, one of the things you have to put in a query letter, and a query letter is like a pitch letter, pitching your book. One of the elements of a query letter is to give a comparison to another book that is well known, and that is the exact book that I compared my book to, Tuesdays with Morrie. It is about an elderly man and a relationship with a younger person. I certainly wasn't as young as the man in Tuesdays with Morrie, but my father was an elderly man. It was dealing with our relationship, with insights that we developed through that relationship during that time. We bonded more than ever in my whole life during that time. When I was growing up, my father was gone at work like most men. When he came home at night, I shared him with my mother and sister. I never really had any alone time with him. Then as I got older, I finally had a family, and we never had any alone time then. Then I had a career working as a probation officer. This was the first time in our lives, I think, that it was just the two of us. over a shared passion that we had both developed, namely acting. So it was a very exciting and magical 3 years.
Would you like to read something for us out of your book?
All right.
Pick any passage you want, and two
Well-
or 3, 4 minutes worth, whatever you feel.
Oh, okay.
Or share one of the.
Well, I think what I'll do, I hadn't come prepared for this, but I think what I'm going to do is, first of all, read the opening 2 lines, because it's kind of how it started off. It started nonchalantly with a thought I blurted out without even realizing I was saying it. It's funny how something as simple as that can change your whole life. This is chapter 3, The Invitation That Changed Our Lives. Come with me to my acting class, Daddy, I said. And I went on to describe how I got into the acting class. And then I talk about how my father did not want to go. And no, I don't think so, protested my father softly. Dad had seemed so lost since Mother died. He was trying to act normal, but an uncharacteristic quietness engulfed him. And then, of course, I kept pushing him to come, and he just didn't have the energy to resist me. I think what I'd like to read, since I put all 6 scenes, and by the way, the scenes that I wrote, they are all dad and daughter scenes. And Dad is this irascible old character who does the most outrageous antics, and daughter is always tearing her hair out over them. So what I'd like to do is perhaps read one of the scenes. It shouldn't take too long. This is Going to the Movies with Dad, the very first one. An elderly man and his daughter are walking down the aisle into the movie theater. Daughter, this is so exciting, Dad. We haven't been to the movies together in ages. Dad, it's so dark in here, I can't see anything. Daughter, your eyes will get used to it soon, Dad. Dad, there are so many people in here. Daughter, just watch your step, you'll be okay. Dad, why is it so noisy? Daughter, don't think about it. Dad, what movie did you say this was again? Daughter, oh, it's that new Tom Cruise movie. Everybody is talking about it, and I've been dying to see it. Dad, Tom Cruise? Who's that? I thought it was with Clark Gable. Daughter, exasperated. No, Dad, he's dead. Dad, what? Gable dead? When did that happen? Daughter, pause. Let's just look for a seat. Dad, I can never see in the movies because I always end up sitting behind some big moose. Daughter, I know, Dad, and I've thought of the perfect solution. We'll find seats behind one empty seat. Nobody ever sits alone, so you'll be able to see everything. Oh, look, there's one. Let's get it quick. It's so crowded in here, it's probably the only one. Dad and daughter make their way into the row, and Dad sits behind the empty seat. Dad, did you bring my backrest? Daughter, yes, Dad, here it is. Dad, the trouble with movies today is there's too much cussing. When Clark Gable used the first cuss word in a movie, we were all shocked. We finally got used to it, but the movies today have no respect for common decency. Daughter, rubbing forehead as though getting a headache, then trying to divert Dad's attention. Look, Dad, here's your popcorn and Coke, and I brought your favorite snacks. Daughter shows the snacks to Dad, pulling them out of the bag one at a time. Milk Duds and Cracker Jacks and... Dad interrupting her. How far is it to the bathroom? Daughter in an exasperated manner. It's just outside the door. Suddenly, a very large man begins to walk down the aisle. When he is near their row, daughter notices him. She does a double take and her eyes open wide, incredulous. The man begins to make his way into the row just ahead of Dad and daughter. Daughter is following him with her gaze, moving her head to watch him. Slowly, her mouth drops open as the man takes the seat in front of Dad. Daughter, brief pause, shouts out, "Oh, shit!"
I like your dialogue because I like dialogue when two people are having different conversations, when they're not really talking to each other.
Mm-hmm.
They're both expressing what they feel like they want to express, and kind of looking at each other as though they are talking to each other, but they really aren't.
Right.
So I find that quite well written. It's a lot of fun.
Well, thank you so much.
Identify the audience for this book.
I think it became very clear to me that the audience are baby boomers and seniors. It is not only baby boomers and seniors, but their family members and friends.
How will someone who reads your book change? What would it change in a reader? What would they come out of the book with that they didn't have when they went in?
That's a good question. As I said earlier, I am hoping to inspire people in the baby boomer and senior age range to realize that they too can find an adventure just like I did. There are so many things out there, and when I meet seniors or baby boomers who say to me, I just don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I don't know. I'm just so depressed. I just don't even want to get out of bed. It just amazes me because there's so much to do, and I hope this book will inspire them.
Now, let me ask you finally, do you think that the acting thing, because it was you and your father, and the relationship wasn't necessarily strained, but it wasn't all that strong, that there's something unique in acting that allowed you to bring out, to enhance the relationship with your father?
I think that is so. Acting for me personally was amazing. I had always had stage fright, having to stand up in front of a group and speak. And when I started the acting class, I didn't know I would have to do that. I thought it was a class where you just sat in your seat and everybody went around the room reading a few lines or a paragraph or so from a play. I had no idea that we had to stand up in front of the group, that we had to perform in an acting class showcase. I remember the first time I was asked to go up in front of the class with a partner and read a scene. I didn't think I could even. When my father started the class, he was a natural personality for it. Acting classes often attract big personality types, and boy was that my father. And he loved it. And I think that we were both getting what we needed out of it in different ways, and we shared that. And it was so exciting. That's all we wanted to talk about, 24/7, it seemed.